But first, today marks 50 days until the election. 50. And 15 days until the first debate. The latest Fox News national poll shows Joe Biden with a 5-point lead over Donald Trump, 51 to 46%. And new battleground state polling out this morning is showing Joe Biden and President Trump statistically tied in several states. First to Arizona, where the latest OHPI poll of likely voters finds Biden ahead by 52 to 42%. Meanwhile, the latest CBS News YouGov poll, this one of registered voters, has Biden leading by 3 points, 47 to 44%, a statistical tie there. In Minnesota, where early in-person voting begins in just 4 days, the CBS News YouGov poll gives Biden a 9-point lead, 50 to 41%. And the latest New York Times Siena College poll shows Biden ahead by 9-point margin also in that state. In Wisconsin, Biden holds a 5-point lead, 48 to 43%. In Nevada, Biden leads by 4 points, 46 to 42, a statistical tie. And in New Hampshire, Biden leads by 3, 45 to 42%, another statistical tie.
So, Steve Kornacki, a lot of close races here. Everybody said it was going to tighten up as we got closer to the end. It is tightening up. Very interesting, though, a couple things. First of all, Minnesota still, even though it was, of course, has been the epicenter of so many of these protests, Minnesota is still comfortably in the Biden camp in 2 polls. That has been for 4 years now a dream of Donald Trump's campaign, or 3.5 years at least, of picking up Minnesota. Right now, it certainly doesn't look like that's going to happen. Wisconsin also, these polls are 5 points. A series of polls a couple days before had Biden up by 8 points. And so it's very interesting. Across the upper Midwest, you have Joe Biden doing, I think, better than his campaign would have expected. But let's now go to the Sun Belt, where he is doing, I won't say worse than expected, but where he's underperforming based on where he is in these other September polls, and that's in Florida and in Arizona. In one Arizona poll, it's tight, as Dan Rather would say, as a tick, at about 3 points. And then we have another one that has Biden up by 10 points. But the underlying issue here, of course, the Latino vote. Biden is underperforming among Latinos, still way ahead of Donald Trump, but underperforming what Hillary Clinton did just 4 years ago. And that's obviously a concern that people like Michael Bloomberg and other Latino leaders are actually starting to address.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think if you look at all of the polling that's out there, and that includes Florida, our NBC Marist poll in Florida last week, as you say, has the race tied overall. But if you look inside the numbers in Florida, and if you look at all these polls you're talking about from the Midwest, the consistent thing that we've been seeing for a long time right now is that wherever you are, there's significant erosion for Donald Trump relative to 2016 in his support among white voters. Wisconsin, you have this poll from the New York Times in Siena where it's a 5-point lead for Biden overall. You look inside those numbers there and you see right away Trump is winning with non-college white voters in Wisconsin, but not by the same margin that he won by in 2016. And now he's not just losing with white voters with a college degree in Wisconsin. He's getting lapped several times by Joe Biden in Wisconsin. That's a story that's being replicated in different ways in all of these states, including Florida and Arizona. But as you mentioned, really when you look in Florida, and to a lesser degree, but to some degree when you look at Arizona, the Trump campaign has been able to find a bit of an offset to that erosion. In Florida, they found a big offset to that erosion, and that is the support among Cuban-American voters. That's our poll last week that showed among Hispanic voters statewide in Florida, and a big part of that is the Cuban-American vote, that Trump leads by 4 points in Florida, statewide among Hispanic voters. In a state like Arizona, where the Hispanic population, again, Hispanic is such an umbrella term right there, the Hispanic population is not really a Cuban-American driven as it is in Florida. you don't see Trump making the strides to the degree he did in Florida. So you take a look at Arizona there. You got 10, you got 4. You had our poll there a few weeks ago that put Biden ahead by 5. I think one thing to keep in mind in Arizona is, as a state, Trump won by 3.5 points in 2016. So if you take the low number that you're seeing in the polling right now, a Biden lead of 4, a Trump margin of 3.5 in 2016, it's closer than you're seeing in a lot of other states. But that's a bigger journey. It's still a significant journey for Democrats from where they finished in 2016, because the margin in Arizona, it was not like Wisconsin. It was not like Pennsylvania. It was not a fraction of a point. It was a solid 3.5-point margin. So for that to move over to 4 points, again, it does speak to that broader national trend there of Donald Trump still winning among white voters, but not nearly to the degree he did in 2016.
And Steve, what is I mean, so much of what I do is based, when I look at these numbers and we get near elections, it's just based on my experience and sort of a gut instinct on how things break. You actually study this and actually know the numbers and know the percentages like the back of your hand. I'm curious, when we start, I usually tell people that when you start seeing candidates over 50%, well, let me start the other way. When you see incumbents under 50%, traditionally that has been a very bad sign, especially in approval rating. That hasn't happened. Of course, that hasn't been a truism so much over the past 5, 6, 7 years. But we're seeing Joe Biden get a lot of 50%, 51%, 52%, even in that Wisconsin poll where it's 51% to 46%. I'm just wondering, how significant is it when we're starting to see, instead of what we'd see sometimes 4 years ago with Hillary at 43 and Trump at 41, or Trump at 44, Hillary at 43, we're now seeing 51 to 46%, 50 to 44%. What's the importance of either one of these candidates having a 5 as the first number in these polling results?
Yeah, I think it's likely more significant this time in 2016 because, unlike 2016, you don't have third-party candidates that are registering at 4, 5, 6% in the polling right now. And you're not on a trajectory like we had in 2016 where a Gary Johnson could get 4%, where a Jill Stein could get 2%, where these third-party candidates could gobble up enough of the vote where Hillary Clinton could only get to 48 nationally, Trump could only get to 46 nationally, and then we could talk about the Electoral College breaking the way it did. You're now looking at a situation where all the polling is suggesting that the vast majority of the vote is going to be a two-party vote. It's going to be either Biden or Trump. So in that case, if Biden hits a situation like Hillary Clinton hit in 2016, where he doesn't grow much between now and Election Day. Hillary Clinton in October of 2016, started November 2016. She wasn't growing her support. She just kind of stayed at 48 and ended up, again, creating that kind of situation where Trump could win the Electoral College. If Biden's over 50 and you don't have a significant, third-party vote, then 50 plus 1%, that's a traditional election, would win that. So I do think there's some room, when I look inside these numbers, there's some room for growth for Trump that may not be popping up right now. And I only say that because there's a disconnect, and this has been steady for a while now in these polls, of, I'd say, about 2 or 3 points between where he runs in the head-to-head with Biden and where his approval rating is. I think he's running at 43% against Biden in Wisconsin. His approval rating in the poll in Wisconsin is 45%. So I think there's room there for that 43 very conceivably to jump to 45 to match the approval rating. But like you're saying, with an absence of third-party candidates gobbling up a significant amount of the vote, if Biden can get to basically 50.1 in Wisconsin, even with that jump for Trump, that still would leave him behind.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.